I'm Kora, 31 years old, a veterinary nurse technician at an emergency animal hospital in Phoenix, Arizona. I make about $62,000 a year. Not a fortune, but enough to live on if you know how to stay away from temptations like Starbucks and end-of-season clearance racks. I started my journey to buy a house when I had just turned 21. While my friends poured money into travel, fancy weddings, or whatever adulting thing they thought they needed, I lived like a college freshman: bulk ramen, thrift store clothes, and a 2002 Toyota Corolla that rattled like I was gambling with fate every time I turned the key. The apartment I rented was about the size of someone else's living room, and I shared it with two roommates, one culinary student, the other a night shift waitress. We had an unspoken rule: whoever woke up last had to kill the roaches. I always got up early. Every shift at the hospital was a battlefield. Dogs swallowing bones, cats with foreign objects stuck inside, rabbits reacting badly to anesthesia, and pet owners panicking 3 times more than their animals. One time, I had to stop a pit bull from bleeding out after a car accident while the surgeon was stuck in traffic. I handled it. And I loved the job. But in exchange, I had no holidays, no vacations, no real birthday parties. Every extra hour worked went into a savings account I named Kora's House. I didn't spend on myself. I didn't rack up credit card debt. I didn't even have Netflix until I turned 28. Then there's my sister. Shelby, 34 years old, 3 kids by 3 different men, never held a job for more than 6 months. She lives like a chaotic mix of a fashion blogger and someone completely dependent on handouts. She calls motherhood a full-time job. But in reality, it's our mom doing the babysitting, while Shelby networks with her pyramid scheme friends. I don't hate Shelby. I just don't get how, in the same family, I had to scrape for every dollar while she always had the newest iPhone, designer bags, and Instagram photos from a Mexico resort every few months. And to be fair, her main sponsor is none other than my dad, Richard. Richard always has a reason for Shelby's spending. When I asked how she could accidentally blow her child's tuition money on clothes, he just laughed. She needs confidence to raise them well. But when I asked him for a small loan for a down payment 3 years ago, he said, "Kora, you need to learn independence." So I did. 10 years, not a single cent from family. I learned to fix plumbing from YouTube, to cook from TikTok, and every time something unexpected happened, like car repairs or wisdom teeth, I handled it without calling anyone. Last month, I bought my first house, a small, flat-roofed, 3-bedroom home on the outskirts of Mesa. It's not fancy, the walls have cracks, the backyard is full of weeds, and the bathroom still has a powder pink toilet from the 1980. But it's mine. I stood in the empty living room the day I got the keys and cried. No one witnessed it, no one clapped, there was no champagne or party, just me, and the quiet victory of a decade's worth of grit. I didn't realize how resilient I was until I finally got it. My first home. Truly mine. Not because someone gave it to me, not because I deserved it more for having kids, but because I worked like every day was my last shot at freedom. I still remember the moment Shelby announced to the whole family that she was going to become the CEO of a revolutionary wellness brand. I was standing in Mom's kitchen chopping onions and nearly cut myself from laughing. According to Shelby, her brand would combine organic detox tea with moonlight healing therapy. I didn't even get the chance to ask how she planned to package moonlight before my father, Richard, nodded like she had just announced a breakthrough cancer vaccine. Bold idea, Shell. I'll help you get started. In our family, "I'll help" meant Richard was pulling out his wallet, and no one opened that wallet faster than he did for Shelby. Within 2 weeks of her bold idea, she had a custom logo, a professionally built website, by someone else, a boho chic photo shoot lineup, and naturally, a trip to Sedona to connect energetically with the universe. I was stunned. Because I knew exactly who was paying for all of it. Richard was still the CFO at a mid-size real estate firm, and my mother, Laura, had taken early retirement from her job as an elementary school teacher. Money wasn't endless, but somehow they had a magical fund that only Shelby had access to. When I was in college, I once needed $400 to register for a required lab course. I called Dad, hoping he'd help. He answered in 5 seconds flat. "Kora, you need to learn how to plan ahead. We can't always bail you out." I ended up charging it to a credit card, paying nearly 20% interest just to graduate on time. Meanwhile, Shelby got $5,000 from him to invest in a dropshipping business for cat grooming brushes. That project lasted 11 days. She announced the market no longer aligned with her energy and pivoted to selling essential oils for activating feminine intuition. I didn't even know intuition came in 25 milliliter glass bottles. While I worked 10 to 12-hour shifts, Shelby continued living at our parents' house. Rent-free, chore-free, dinner-free. Laura, the same woman who used to make me wash dishes 3 times a week as a teen, now willingly played nanny, chauffeuring the kids and helping with Shelby's personal brand photo shoots. Shelby has 3 kids, Olivia, Max, 5, and Willow, 2. 3 kids, 3 last names. I'm not judging, I love those kids. But I couldn't stop wondering, when will Shelby actually take responsibility? And brought it up to Mom once and only once. "I think you're enabling her too much," I said softly, in the kitchen, while Shelby was out with her camera crew and the kids in matching outfits. My mom paused, her face unreadable. "Shelby's not as strong as you, Kora. She needs more support." I went quiet. I understood. But I didn't agree. Strength isn't a privilege, it's a choice. I chose to leave their protection at 18. Not because I wanted to, but because I knew that if I didn't carve out my own path, I'd forever be a side character in the family play where Shelby starred as the lead. Richard never hid his pride in Shelby. Her product shoot photos were framed and displayed in his home office. My honors diploma? Tucked away in a drawer. He always said, "Kora doesn't need praise. She's the quiet one, just gets things done." But I got it. To him, Shelby was the one who needed rescuing. I was just fine. Shelby has legally filed for bankruptcy twice. Both times Richard bailed her out. I've never owed anyone a dime. But to him, Shelby is brave and entrepreneurial. Me? Just safe. When I bought my house, I didn't announce it. No fanfare, no requests for help. I sent a photo of the keys to the family group chat. Shelby replied with a yawning emoji. Richard said nothing for 2 days. Then he texted, "Good job, Kora. If you want, Shelby and the kids can stay with you a few months to get settled." I didn't respond. But at that moment, something became painfully clear. I had just bought a house. And they still wanted me to live like a guest in it. The unfairness in my family didn't start the day Richard suggested I let Shelby and the kids stay for a few months. It had been simmering long before I was old enough to understand what favoritism even meant. But it truly exploded the day I found out about the house in Gilbert. It was a 4-bedroom farmhouse-style home in a gated community with 24/7 security, just 15 minutes from downtown. I only found out by accident. Mom sent me an email by mistake, one that was meant for Shelby. It was an invoice for a master bathroom remodel. Invoice for master bathroom remodel. I froze. I'd never heard Mom mention redoing a bathroom, especially when they were still living in that creaky old house where the heater wheezed every winter. I asked her directly. She was silent for a moment, then admitted, "Well, your dad and I gave Shelby a new house last year, so the kids could have stability." I couldn't speak for nearly a full minute. A new house? In Gilbert? "I thought that was an investment property," I said, though I already knew I was just trying to comfort myself. Mom only sighed. She needed a place of her own to rebuild. That house was worth nearly $880,000. I looked it up on Zillow right after the call. They bought it when the market was low, almost at rock bottom. A few months later, Shelby had her own private pool, a robot lawnmower, and a garage big enough for both an SUV and the pink Jeep she'd just posted on Instagram. Me? I had just replaced the roof on my modest old house using 3 years' worth of savings. I took time off work to paint my own living room because I couldn't afford a contractor. I was still using a dishwasher from another decade that clanked like an ancient washing machine every time it ran. I wasn't angry that she got a house. I was angry that they acted like I didn't exist. No offer. No discussion. They handed Shelby a brand new start without asking for proof of responsibility, growth, or even gratitude. And I, the one who never asked for help, never broke a rule, was only mentioned when someone needed to help the family stabilize. After that, I started paying more attention. The bills under Dad's name were clearly for Shelby, like a $250 a month high-speed internet plan, routine lawn care service in Gilbert, and plane tickets to a female entrepreneur soul retreat in Palm Springs. That entrepreneur hadn't earned a single dollar legally, as far as I could tell. Then it all spiraled when Shelby sold the house. She called it a strategic decision. I called it a textbook Shelby meltdown. She sold the house less than a year after moving in, making close to $90,000 thanks to market growth and upgrades, paid for by my parents. Where did that money go? Part of it funded a branding partnership with a guy named Dustin, a part-time rapper and self-proclaimed global marketing strategist, selling full courses on TikTok. Dustin lived in LA and posted videos about attracting wealth energy by taping cash to the ceiling and meditating beneath it. Shelby put $100,000 into his studio, which turned out to be a rented warehouse in a sketchy neighborhood. The rest? Shelby launched a light healing garden, basically a round tent made of bamboo poles and white fabric, where she hosted meditation workshops and sold $25 celery juice bottles labeled Celestial Flow Elixir. Richard ignored it all. When I asked, he simply chuckled. Shelby hasn't had your luck, but she'll manage, she has vision. I held back a bitter laugh. Vision? That vision had cost the family an entire house and piled on a mountain of quiet debt. I knew what Richard saw in me, the frugal vet tech who stayed afloat. And Shelby? She was the daughter who needed support to grow. But no one seemed willing to face the truth. Shelby wasn't growing. She was just changing the label on each failure. I used to believe that if I stayed quiet, worked hard, and behaved properly, one day they'd see. But now I know. Some people only see what they want to believe, even when the truth is right in front of them. It was a Monday afternoon, after an 11-hour shift. I still had cat blood on my scrubs and a migraine pounding behind my eyes from lack of sleep. I had barely stepped inside when the doorbell rang. I thought it was another Amazon misdelivery. But when I opened the door, I froze. Richard and Shelby stood there. Dad was in a crisp white polo, hands in his pockets like he was inspecting a property he'd just bought. Shelby wore a beige maxi dress and oversized sunglasses that covered half her face, matcha in one hand, a phone with a ring light in the other, live streaming. "Oh, Kora, your house is so cute," Shelby cooed, glancing around like she was rating it for Instagram potential. A little dark in tone, but great vibe. I said nothing, just stepped aside. Partly out of politeness, partly because I wanted to see what stunt they were pulling this time. Every step Richard took felt like he was mentally appraising my house. He raised an eyebrow at the wall I had painted myself and turned to me. "Kora, we need to talk," he said in that grave, rehearsed tone he always used before dropping a "for the good of the family" bomb. I crossed my arms and leaned against the kitchen counter. "Shelby and the kids are going through a rough patch," he started. "After the whole music studio thing, well, you know. Dustin vanished. Shelby needs a stable place. A quiet place. To start over." "What about the Gilbert house?" I asked, the sarcasm barely hidden. "Oh, right. That became a healing juice camp before being sold off to pay debts. Shelby pouted. You don't have to bring up negative energy, Kora. I'm trying to realign and embrace a fresh path. A fresh path? I raised an eyebrow. Richard cleared his throat. Your mother and I discussed this. This house. It's too big for one person. You're close to the clinic. It'd be easier for you to find a condo. Shelby, on the other hand, has 3 kids. They need space. A real home. You're saying? I should give her my house? I asked. Not give, share. For the family, he corrected, voice firm. If you truly care about your nieces and nephew, this is the right thing to do. Shelby stepped forward, hand on my shoulder like we were at an award ceremony. Don't worry, sis. I'll redecorate. Feng shui friendly for the kids. And if you want to crash here for the first few weeks, that's fine too. I brushed her hand off, blood boiling. This is my house. I worked nearly 10 years to buy it. Every dollar came from me, not a cent from anyone in this family. And now you show up asking me to move out so your golden girl can start over for the umpteenth time? Richard's gaze turned cold. Kora, if you don't understand the value of family, maybe you should reconsider your place in the will. Shelby finally looked up from her phone, eyes gleaming despite her angelic tone. You know Mom and Dad always want what's best for both of us. But if you won't help me, at least don't stand in my way. I just want the best for my children. I laughed for the first time during that entire exchange. A dry, humorless sound. I'm the only one here who's never received anything from Mom and Dad. Shelby got a house. She sold it. Then threw 6 figures at fantasy projects. And now she comes here, with what right, to claim mine. Richard stepped closer, voice low and commanding. Think carefully. This is your chance to prove you're part of this family. Don't force me to make a difficult decision. Like cutting me from the will? I shot back. If that will is just a reward for blind obedience, I'd rather be erased from it today. Silence. Shelby had already turned off her live stream. Richard stared at me for a few more seconds, then gave a slow nod. You'll regret how you spoke today. I straightened, walked to the door, and threw it open. Get out of my house. Shelby and Richard left my house that day looking like they'd been personally insulted to the core. But I didn't care. The rage had settled into something colder. A quiet resolve that comes when you've been dismissed long enough to stop seeking approval. I knew this wasn't over. Shelby didn't know how to give up. And Richard? He saw my refusal to comply for the family as betrayal. So, I got ready. Truth is, I had been ready for years, not because I predicted they'd show up demanding my house, but because I'd learned to protect myself ever since I realized I had no one backing me. I called it the Miller Family Survival Plan. Funny name. Dead serious contents. I opened the safe and pulled out a thick, black folder. Pages of documents, bank transfers, social media screenshots, emails, even credit card statements from the time Richard had me manage his account while Mom was in the hospital. Page 1. The Gilbert House. Proof Shelby's name was on the deed, not some family investment like they used to say. The purchase value was $882,000. She sold it 8 months later for $934,000. I had the Zillow listing to prove it. Page 2. Bank transfers Richard had made to Shelby in the past 3 years. Over $390,000, not including cash, kids' tuition, health care, or their Bali retreat. Every figure backed by statements, texts, and Shelby's own brag posts. Blessed to have a generous dad. Page 3. Photos of the Celestial Flow Elixir Light Retreat. I even saved the comments from attendees who accused her of serving tap water while claiming it was imported, Peruvian, mind juice. Page 4. Invoices for Dustin's sound healing studio. The guy who starred with Shelby in a viral invest in art therapy video then disappeared after 2 months. Shelby called it a spiritual trial. I called it fraud. I didn't gather this for revenge. I gathered it because sometimes people need receipts when memory becomes convenient. The next day, I called Richard. No texts, no emails, just a call. He answered on the fourth ring. Voice cold, controlled. Kora? Do you have time to meet today? I asked. This afternoon. Don't bring Shelby. This is between you and me. He hesitated, then agreed. We met at a quiet cafe in Central Scottsdale. I arrived first, picked the table by the window. When he walked in, I pointed to the chair across from me and set the folder between us. These are documents I've kept over the years, I began. I didn't plan to use them, but after yesterday, I realized you needed a reminder. He flipped through the pages. Silent. His brow only tightened when skimming a few expense summaries. When he reached the asset totals, I spoke. You want to cut me from the will, to pressure me into giving up my house. But maybe you forgot. Shelby, with everything you've already given her, has received more than I could ever inherit. Your net worth now, after subtracting mortgage and living costs, is barely $700,000, I said clearly. Shelby has burned through nearly double that, and left nothing behind. Richard said nothing. But I saw him swallow hard. I don't need the will, I said. All I need is the truth. Spoken once, clearly, without excuses. He finally exhaled, eyes still locked on the folder. Kora. How long have you been keeping all this? Since the day Shelby sold that first house, I said. Right after I saw your face. Not angry, not disappointed, just quietly upset that you lost money. Not because of Shelby, but because I saw it. He leaned back, looked at me for a long time. What do you want? I met his eyes. Nothing. Just for you to understand, next time Shelby, or anyone else tries to take what I worked my whole life for, they'll have to deal with this. I tapped the folder. And if you ever threaten to cut me from the will again, remember, there's nothing left to cut. I stood up. Left my coffee untouched. Left my father to sit there and reckon with the cost of favoritism. I didn't look back. I didn't have to anymore. 3 days after meeting Richard at the cafe, I thought things had finally calmed down. He didn't text. Shelby didn't call. I returned to my shifts. Back to dogs choking on chicken bones, cats with broken legs, and tearful pet parents asking, will she make it? Strangely enough, that chaos made me feel more grounded than any family conversation ever had. That Thursday, I was working the morning shift. It was quiet, except for a hunting dog that skated into a street lamp, trying to keep up with his owner. I was still laughing at the video when my phone started buzzing non-stop in my coat pocket. First message came from Amy, my neighbor to the left. Kora, someone's moving stuff into your house. Did you rent it out? Second was from Mr. John, the retired gardener 2 doors down who hated loud noises. There's a U-Haul parked outside. Blonde girl is live streaming a house reveal. You still living there? My chest tightened. One phrase ran through my mind. This can't be happening. I requested emergency leave, swapped my scrub top for a t-shirt, and drove home so fast I might have racked up tickets if traffic cams caught me. And there it was, as I turned the corner into my neighborhood. A massive U-Haul blocked the driveway. The gate was wide open. And Shelby stood on the lawn with a phone mounted on a selfie stick, twirling like a resort ad. Welcome back to my new sanctuary, darlings, she beamed into the camera. Behind her, her 3 kids ran wild. The oldest bounced on the hammock I'd just installed last weekend. The youngest scribbled all over my garage door with black permanent marker. Richard stood on the front porch talking to a man in uniform, a locksmith. I stopped the car in the middle of the road, flung open the door and stepped out, not caring who saw. It felt like I had just been yanked out of my own life. Shelby spotted me first. Oh, you're home early? I was going to surprise you. I didn't respond. I marched straight to Richard. What are you doing here? My voice was low and sharp. He adjusted his collar, trying to stay calm. Kora, I spoke with a lawyer. This house is still a family asset, and you hired a locksmith and let people into my house while I was working? Shelby butted in. Can you not yell? I've got my coming home video scheduled this afternoon. I was going to tag you in the caption. I turned to the locksmith and pulled out my ID and a copy of the property deed. Did you verify the name on the title before changing the locks? I asked flatly. He hesitated, stepped back. They showed me a deed copy, said they had consent. Fake. I pulled out my phone and dialed 911. Shelby's tone shifted instantly, like a kid with a stomachache. You don't have to escalate this, it's just family. I've got 3 kids, you've got, what, IKEA furniture and a cat that plays dead when guests show up? Richard tried to jump in. Kora, you're overreacting. We can work this out privately, no need for police. I stared at him like he'd just asked me to remove my roof for someone who needed better light. You trespassed. Shelby is live streaming a commercial stunt called Spiritual Homecoming. You call this moving in? I call it unlawful entry. I spoke clearly into the phone once it connected. I'd like to report an unauthorized entry and illegal lock change. Individuals are moving property into my home while I'm away. I have full ownership documentation. When the call ended, Richard sank into the porch bench. Shelby took a few steps back, still live streaming, but now framing her face in victim mode. I stood there, on my lawn, watching my home become a prop for their low-budget drama. And realized something. If I didn't finish this, it would never end. They would keep filming, keep faking, keep performing. Unless I was the one to cut the scene. The police arrived in just 15 minutes, faster than I expected. 2 patrol cars pulled up at the same time, freezing Shelby's kids mid-chaos on the lawn. One of the officers, a woman with a sharp gaze, scanned the U-Haul, the nervous locksmith, and Shelby. Now with her live stream off, dress adjusted, and abandoned single mom persona switched on. Your name? The female officer asked. Kora Miller. I'm the legal owner of this house. I handed her notarized copies of my deed, the purchase contract, 3 years of property tax statements, and utility bills, all under my name. And these individuals? She nodded toward Shelby and Richard. They don't live here. I didn't authorize their entry. They hired a locksmith and entered without consent while I was at work. The male officer turned to the locksmith, who was visibly shrinking behind his truck, still holding his toolkit. I was hired to change the locks, he muttered. The man said it was his house. They showed me papers. I didn't verify. Do you still have the papers? The officer asked. The locksmith handed over a wrinkled bundle. The female officer flipped through them, then frowned. This is a Word doc printout. No notary. No property record number. They told you this was the title deed? I didn't say anything, just stared at Richard, trying to keep a calm face, while Shelby whispered frantically to her kids, clearly setting up a narrative of being a family torn apart by greed. The officer turned back to me. Would you like to file a complaint for illegal entry and unlawful possession? I nodded. And I want a formal report. They changed my locks, moved in belongings, and live-streamed claiming the house was theirs. Shelby suddenly burst into tears, or tried to. She's destroying the lives of 3 innocent children. I just wanted them to have a peaceful home. Do you have any proof of ownership? The officer asked bluntly. This is family property, Richard cut in. I'm her father, I have rights. No, you don't, the male officer said flatly. The house is in Ms. Kora's name. Entering without consent, especially with a lock, change and moving in items, is potentially a criminal matter. The locksmith raised his hands. I'll sign a witness report. I had no idea it was fake. They said it was a family transfer. The officers halted all activity and began documenting the incident. One took me aside for a statement and requested digital copies of my documents. The other instructed Richard and Shelby to vacate the premises until further notice. Shelby lost it. This is family violence. We're the victims here. You're yelling in front of children. Lower your voice or I will cuff you, the officer said, dead serious. Richard tried to drag her away, but she kept filming herself, ranting about systemic injustice. I stood silently. Not angry. Not triumphant. Just tired. But that fatigue didn't erase the truth. They'd crossed the final line. Before leaving, the female officer turned to me. You'll receive the official report within 24 hours. If you choose to pursue legal action, retain all evidence. Photos, social media posts, everything. I have it all, I said, and I don't plan on letting this go. As the U-Haul reversed and rolled away, leaving tire marks on the new concrete, I walked into my house, the door still unlocked, and turned the bolt. The living room was a mess. The couch was pushed out of place, the rug stained. A corner of the ceramic vase my mother gave me chipped. All of it could be fixed. All of it. Except the faith I had in the two people I once hoped would choose to do what's right. I pulled out my phone, opened my cloud storage and began uploading every file, every photo, every clip. With one note attached. If they come back again, I won't just call the cops, I'll call my lawyer. I thought things would calm down after the police filed the report and ordered Shelby and Richard to leave my house. But I underestimated just how stubborn and reckless they could be. 2 weeks later, I got a call from a federal investigator. They had opened a formal case based on the evidence I submitted, from the unlawful entry to the forged documents. But that was just the tip of the iceberg. The investigator, Bailey, calm but sharp, asked if I had copies of Shelby's social media videos. I sent the full folder I had saved, clips of her showing off, brand collabs, sponsored gifts, unboxing beauty products, clothes, hair tools, all tagged with ads and real company names. Bailey called me back 2 days later. Her voice had shifted. It wasn't just professional anymore, it was disbelief. She's received sponsorships from over 40 brands in the last 18 months. No signed contracts. 12 of them said she failed to deliver content. 6 say they never agreed to a deal. And 3 issued legal warnings for fake engagement stats. I wasn't surprised. She's using fake accounts to like, comment and boost herself, Bailey added. Also, mall surveillance in Chandler caught her 2 months ago putting items in her bag and walking out unpaid. That case is pending charges. And Richard? I never meant to drag him into this. He was biased, cold, unreasonable. But I never imagined I'd help unravel his entire legacy. Then Bailey said, Ms. Kora, in tracking Shelby's payouts, we found most of the money came from a company called RLM Financials. Do you recognize that name? I froze. RLM, short for Richard Lawrence Miller, was my father's firm. He'd been CFO for over 15 years, and according to Bailey, he had created a fake, experimental marketing expense category to funnel hundreds of thousands of dollars from company funds into his daughter's account. That's embezzlement, she said. If we confirm there was no approval from other executives, he'll be facing criminal charges. Less than 3 weeks later, Shelby was arrested while setting up for her Healing Through Dance workshop at a rented studio. The video of her in handcuffs hit social media within hours, posted by a former fan who'd paid $599 for a course Shelby never held. Richard went silent. 1 week after Shelby's arrest, he was placed on administrative leave. They sealed his work devices and began auditing 7 years of tax records. Some staff revealed he'd been quietly wiring funds to unverified vendors for 3 years, funding Shelby's delusions the entire time. And the kids? When Child Protective Services stepped in, I was genuinely worried. Not because Shelby got arrested, but because the children would be caught in the chaos adults created. Then something unexpected happened. All 3 fathers of each child showed up at the preliminary hearing, requesting custody. One of them, Brian, Olivia's dad, was now married to a child psychologist. He stood before the judge and laid out a full care plan. Schooling, therapy, healthcare, everything. The court agreed, and when the ruling was announced, Shelby slumped in the defendant's chair. For once, without her phone. All 3 kids were placed with Brian and his wife, who live in a quiet suburb outside Peoria. I visited once, at their invitation. A cozy little home. No designer labels, no cameras. No metallic yoga mats. Just the sound of kids laughing, fresh cookies in the oven, and 2 grown-ups finally ready to be real parents. I left with a strange feeling. Like a part of the past I used to resent was slowly being rebuilt. In a way I never saw coming. Got it. Here's the American English translation of the final story segment, following all your instructions on tone, currency, formatting, and policy-compliant phrasing. I still live in that house. The same one they once tried to take from me. The one they live-streamed like it was their personal stage. But now it's quiet. No more U-Haul wheels screeching across the driveway. No more ring lights beaming through the living room window at 9 in the morning. Just me, the soft whistle of my kettle in the afternoon, and the stray cat I adopted from the clinic. Her name is Ginger. She likes sitting on the windowsill and never bothers anyone. At last, no one controls me anymore. After Shelby's arrest, her Instagram account, once followed by over 280,000, plummeted. The promo posts were deleted, the Goddess Vibes tags vanished. Brands that had partnered with her issued public terminations. Complaints flooded in about fake coaching programs, sponsorship money taken, then ghosted. Within less than 3 weeks, her follower count dropped to under 9,000, mostly bots or people sticking around for the drama, and then, the account disappeared. I don't know if she deleted it or if the platform took it down. But by then nobody really cared. Richard hasn't been convicted yet, but the financial investigation is ongoing. He permanently resigned from RLM Financials. I've heard his assets are frozen for auditing. My mother, Laura, moved in with a cousin near Flagstaff, away from all the fallout. She hasn't called me since the police showed up at my door. Then, 3 weeks after the court hearing, I got a handwritten letter. A rarity in an age when people just hit send. The handwriting was messy, the ink smudged by tears, or maybe on purpose. From Shelby. Claire, I know you probably don't want to hear from me. I'm not asking for forgiveness. But I've lost everything. My account, my work, my kids. I'm staying with an old friend, waiting for my next hearing. I need money to hire a lawyer. I have no one else. If you can help, even just a little, I promise I'll pay it back. I've changed. I truly want to make it right. Shelby. I folded the letter. Didn't feel angry. Didn't feel relieved. I took a picture, wrote "no" across it in red ink, slipped it back in an envelope, and sent it back. Not out of spite, but because I'd learned something. Kindness is not a resource for others to burn through. I can't keep being the safety net for people who never learn to stand on their own. I never went public with this story. No podcasts, no interviews, no healing journey narrative. I just kept going. Repainted the front door Shelby had once covered with a sign reading, "Energy Entrance." I started spending time with myself. Gardening. Blogging about pet health. Not for views, just to share what I know. I even tried baking, though my first muffin came out hard as a rock. One afternoon, while stacking books on a new shelf, I found an old photo. Me at graduation, standing in the courtyard. No parents beside me. Just a small, slightly strained smile. And I froze. Because it hit me. I had spent my whole youth waiting for someone in my family to validate me. But in the end, what I needed wasn't their approval. It was my own respect. Life after a storm isn't loud. It's steady. Calm. No one saying it's out of love while trying to control you. I don't know what'll happen to Shelby. I don't know if Richard ever feels regret, but I do know this. They no longer have the power to take away my peace. And that, to me, is worth more than any inheritance ever could be. Got it? Here is the translated version in natural American English, following your formatting and policy requirements. My story proves that sometimes what we need isn't our family's approval, it's the courage to break free from them. I spent years in silence, enduring favoritism and control, only to realize kindness should never be a lifelong obligation. Setting firm boundaries didn't just help me keep my home, it helped me keep myself. In real life, peace doesn't come from being loved the right way, but from loving yourself enough to walk away from what no longer deserves you. What do you think about Kora's choice? Was she too harsh? Or was she finally protecting what she truly deserved? Share your thoughts below, and don't forget to follow the channel for more powerful, real-life family stories.